Hello YouTube and welcome back to Drunk Story Time. So tonight, as I promised you, I have a much better microphone and a much better camera. And I've had a sufficient amount to drink, but you can never have too much of a good thing, so I'm going to continue. And tonight, the story I'm going to tell you is how I acquired one of my seemingly most unusual pets, but the one that I think I've had probably one of the bigger connections with in my life, and that is my possum, and her name was Amy. So to start with, up here, possums are a bit of a pest. They live in your ceiling, they wreck your trees, they do horrible things. They're wild animals that are not meant to be in suburban towns. And, we built houses over where they live, so where are they going to live? As us being people, we get pissed off at them and we want them to leave. But where I used to live, we had many possums living in my ceiling. And it's funny because the Australian brush-tailed possum, which is the one we were talking about, look it up if you want, they're very territorial, which is really weird to have many of them living in one ceiling. But the thing that is quite common to have many of them trying to live in one area is because they're territorial, they will fight. And they fought during the day, during the night, during the morning, during fucking sex, everything. Doesn't matter what you were trying to do, they were interrupting it, and they just screamed and bashed and screamed. And it wasn't fun. So I grew to have a quite large hatred for these Australian marsupials. And they breed like rabbits too.
They like rabbits. They have like one baby every 6 months. And then they don't have another one while they're raising that baby. So it's actually nothing like rabbits, but it's annoying because they breed quite continuously.
And the problem I was having was I was living in an older house where all the wiring was run through the roof. And through the roof is where all the possums lived, and they had pissed, shit, chewed, and pretty much lived on everything that was vital, to the point where whenever something in the house stopped working, much like the hot water, people had come to try and fix it, they'd lift the manhole, take one look in the roof and be like, well, fuck that. So instead of just fixing the wiring, they would run new wiring under the house. A lot less secure, more exposed to the elements, works better for you than the stuff exposed to the possums that you know are living in your ceiling. This one time, a possum got killed. I'm not going to say how, it just happened. A possum got killed. And normally when this happens, you're just like, well, that's sad, I'm going to put it in a bag, put it in the bin, off it goes to the tip, and it's going to feed some lucky seagull. Or probably another possum out there. They're not real friendly. And so I'd put this one next to the bin, going to put it in a bag, put it in the bin after I'd done doing the yard work, and I heard this noise. This, I don't know. I really don't know how to describe it. I know it now is a baby needing its mother, but at the time I was like, the fuck? So I checked my animals, they were fine, and I've come back, and here is this possum corpse, and it is just lying there, and this very needy noise is emanating from it. And first of all, I was scared. I didn't really know what to do. Second of all, I've thought, check its pouch. Check its pouch, sure enough, baby. And it was small, like it was very small and pink. So my first thought was, step on it, get her over with. Don't make it suffer any longer than it needs to. And then as I've picked it up, this little thing has been in its mother's corpse for many, many hours. Hear that? Curlews. Love Queensland. Yeah, and it's grasped onto me, and it is covered in shit, like absolutely. It stunk, and its eyes weren't open, and it looked horrible. It looked really bad. But then, as it clung to me, I've looked at it and I've gone, "All right, baby, you didn't choose to live in the ceiling. You didn't choose to personally try and piss me off. You get a chance." So I've picked it up, taken it inside, washed it off, and then rung my vet friend, hit Google, hit my family. My family's actually quite well versed in looking after animals because we come from a small country town out west.
Out west? I don't know if that's a term everyone gets. It means when you live in Australia and you live on the East Coast, out west means you come from a very small place.
So that's how it works. But so I found out you need to keep these things warm. Like, they are babies. They do not regulate their own body heat. They do not go to the toilet by themselves. So pretty much it's like having a fetus. So I've taken baby fetus, wrapped it up, fed it as I was instructed by my vet friends, looked after it. And I know people will say, why didn't you take it to an animal carrier? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? I'm quite proficient in looking for animals, even though I'm not a registered carer. I grew up just, if something needs something, you give it to it. Like, coming from a small rural town, when something gets hit by a car, you work out what it needs. Sometimes it needs a bullet to the head, but sometimes it just needs, a bit of feed, a bit of bandage, and off it can go again. So I didn't really feel like burdening a carer who would have something that was, needed much more of their talents to take care of than this thing. So I took it in, kept it safe, kept it warm, and it was all right. Apart from that, the worst part about having an infant possum is though that you have to take the tiny little fetus thing, roll it on its back, hold it down. Well, not hold it down, but hold it still. Take a bit of warm cloth, and you've got to rub its genitals. And do you know why you're doing this? Because they do not piss and shit on their own. So this whole time that you're doing this, feces and urine is spewing out of this little pink thing that you're trying to keep alive. That's the gratification you get for doing a good job. If you're massaging well, you get shit on. And you know what? It was probably the worst part of the whole experience. But, after doing that constantly, 3 times a day, a lot of shit, I ended up with a little fuzz rat. And she was quite adorable. I worked out she was a she very quickly because she had a pouch. Apparently marsupials grow their pouch really quickly. And I was mum, she was the baby. And it got to the point where there was no more mixing up horrible smelling milk. There was no more trying to force rubber tit down her mouth to try and get her to take the milk, whether it was too warm, too cold, the right temperature. It was, give her some fruit, sit her on your shoulder, let her cover you on whatever shit that comes out of which end, and she's gonna be fine. I lost a lot of shirts. A lot of really nice shirts. But it doesn't matter. She turned into a member of the family, pretty much. She got on really well with me. And she was scared of everything like most marsupials are. Like, they're nocturnal, so they can hide. And I don't know if you've noticed, I happen to be human, so I tend to go out during the daylight hours. And she'd come with me because she needed the support and body warmth. And she learnt that whatever I interacted with, as long as I wasn't scared, she shouldn't be scared. Which is not something that you need to teach a wild animal. It's actually probably preferable that you don't teach that to a wild animal, ever. But she learnt it quite quickly, and it sort of made life a bit easier. Then she grew up, she got bigger and bigger and bigger. She ate solider and solider food, and then it got to the point where she lived in a giant cage. Apart from living in a small bag that was a thing, she lived in a giant cage. And I just had to take her out, give her some contact with her parent, teach her a few things, how to climb, how to eat, where to find food. And she was growing up quite well. And they get to the age where everything says that you should be ready to release them, which I quite was. She came from the area I was living in, so I was ready to release her. So I've taken her outside, been like, this is a tree. Problem being, baby possums follow their parents. So me not having the capability to climb a tree, I'm like, go on, climb. And she'd just fall to the floor. And she'd sit there and she'd quite happily just look at me like, well, this is what you're doing, so this is what I should be doing. And I'd be like, no, little one, you need to learn to possum. Yeah, and she grew and she grew. She grew well past the age that she should have been released. And sometimes possums can be domesticated. And it's not recommended. They are wild animals. They need to go back to where they came from. But sometimes it can happen. And I can't say that I didn't have that little spark of hope somewhere down in here saying, maybe she gonna live with you forever. Because I love this little thing. I saved it. I pulled its shit-covered body out of another body and hosed it off and kept it and raised it into, from nothing to an animal, a full-grown animal. And it got to the point where she followed me around. I didn't have to carry her anymore. Her claws were getting quite long, which was good. So she'd run around the house. She'd follow me. We'd go here. We'd go there. She was getting along with the dog, cat, everything. It's like a member of the family. And she grew quite large to the point where I actually had to start trimming her nails because she wanted to be on mum. Claws that are for running through, well, up very large trees. They're not something you want to run up a person because they will slice you to ribbons. So a trimmer, she didn't like it, but she put up with it. Never bit me, never did anything bad to me. I had her for just over 12 months. And then my father will tell you, there's the call of the wild. It happens. And I was waiting for it. I was always waiting for it, but I was never just going to put this thing outside and be like, there you go. It was nice knowing you. Off you go. It was never going to happen. I just couldn't do it. And so it got to this one point where one day I've just gone to get her out of her cage like normal, and she's growled at me like I was another animal. I know I am another animal, but she's just growled at me like I was another animal. And I picked her up, and she snuggled in really, really tight, like she's grabbed both sides of my shirt and pulled it over herself, and she's just climbed in really tight and made needy sounds, which I reacted to. I'd reacted to every noise, which I really shouldn't have, the way I did. But I probably still will. And probably would do again. But yeah, I've reacted to it, and I've just held her in close. And then she's gotten bitey, which she never did. Like, she bit me on the hand. And then she started to scratch and claw and make horrible noises, like, not attack noises, like overexcited noises. And it really hurt. So I've pulled her off, and then I've put her back in close, and she's clung in. She's clung in nice and close, and she just nestled in. But every time there was a hand on its own or a hand come close, she went for it. And I've just thought to myself, maybe it's time. Because they reach an age where they fight. The parents kick them out of home. They fight with their parents, vice versa. They part ways. They go have their own baby. And I thought maybe this is it. So I've put her back in the cage, thinking, you know, maybe she's just on her period, because I'm sure that happens. I know that happens. Pulled her out. The next day, gone to give her another hug. There was no hugging involved. She wasn't wild, and she wasn't vicious. I'm going to describe it as she suddenly became very independent, because she never hurt me and she never wanted to hurt me. But she didn't want me anymore. Which I understand, and I kind of was waiting for. I was just sort of hoping against hope that it wouldn't happen. But it did. So I've taken her outside, as I had many times before, and I put her in a tree in the yard, and I was like, because I figured she should go out where she came from. I was like, go. And she didn't want to at first. She kept trying to follow me back into the house, but because she was of an aggressive standpoint, if I stopped moving, she stopped moving, and I probably could have picked her up and forced her back into her cage and kept her for another 10 years, but that's not fair. She climbed her tree, and she spent 2 days in the tree at the front of the house, and I kept an eye on her. I made sure there was water around and food around, just not that she couldn't find it, but just in case, and then she left. And I've never felt more sad and accomplished in any action in my entire life. I raised something from nothing. Something that probably would have been dead in a few hours, and I raised it to adulthood. Taught it how to be. It depended on me. And it's now out in the world, and it's, like, as Dad likes to say, it's probably got a belly full of arms and legs, meaning that she's probably quite pregnant herself. So she's probably out raising families and doing her own things. And I think she's still around the house. Not around the house, but every now and then I find a little bit of possum shit in and around. So I think she's still here sometimes, because most possums would be too scared to come anywhere near the dog. But the dog would recognize her, and she would recognize the dog, and they'd understand each other. So that's why I think she's still in and around. But she got a belly full of arms and legs, and quite frankly, I don't think I want to raise another possum. But I'm very happy that I did. And if I was put back in the same situation, I would definitely do it again, because she gave me so much happiness, and she depended on me so much that I can't explain it. But I do have some photos of her growing up. I'm going to try and probably piece them in through this whole thing. Really new to video editing, so we'll see how it goes. But her name was Amy, and she was my baby. If something needs help and they can't get it themselves, I'm going to try and give it to them. So if you enjoyed this rant, like the video, subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be doing these every Tuesday. I will slowly be getting better at video editing. Maybe not, because I do most of this while I'm drunk, and then I try and get the video up straight after I've recorded it, trying to make it Tuesday. It's half hour past Tuesday right now, but I don't know how good you're going to get at video editing while you're drunk. Maybe you become awesome at it while you're sober if you get good while you're drunk. Maybe. Anyway guys, like, subscribe, share with your friends. Second video. Let me know what you think. Alright? Bye. Sorry, I'm looking at the camera because I'm new to this, and this is like really tracking everything. Look at that go. Look at my eyes. Alright, enough of that.